And we are live. Hi, everybody. And hey, Luis, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you, Catherine?
Doing good. It is so good to have you back and just joining us. Thank you to everybody who's tuning in on Twitter or on Facebook or on YouTube. If you are watching on YouTube or Facebook and you're watching the recording, thank you for tuning in. There will still be some fun information because Luis and I have been talking about what's coming up for the rest of this year. And you joined me in January on a panel talking about writing projects for 2022. So I'm really excited to just hear how it's going with all the writing. But before we dive into that, why don't you tell everybody who's new to you who you are and what you write?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me here again. It's a pleasure being here. Well, as you can see, my name is Luis Luis M. Mejia, author name. That's actually my name, not a pen name. And I write fantasy, epic fantasy. My debut novel, which is available on Amazon and on sale for this week, is the Grimmelkin Knight. And it's a mixture heavily inspired by Tolkien's work, mainly The Hobbit. It's a story about this small cowardice cat-like figure who has to go on a quest to save an ill prince, and he goes on this adventure. It's there are some dark scenes in the novel, but it's definitely on the lighter end. Nothing, I would say, nothing like Game of Thrones or anything. Too violent or adult content in it. But it's an epic fantasy, the typical go on a quest adventure. Um, but yeah, that's mainly what I write, and that's what I've been up to.
Well, that's really exciting. And for those of you who have not been following me very long, in addition to writing books, I also review books for Readsy Discovery. And that is how I came across The Grimmelkin Knight and how I came across Luis. I actually did not know Luis before I reviewed Grimmelkin Knight on Readsy Discovery. And it was one of the few books that I gave a 5-star review last year. I gave 19 books a 5-star review, and the other 30 to 60 or so a month that I read made 3 4-star reviews. I cannot speak highly enough of it, especially if you have a child who's wanting to get into epic fantasy. Like the younger end of YA, older end of middle grade would probably really love this because, like The Hobbit, it is real and sort of raw, but not too graphic to where it's just cringe either. So I just love that aspect. And the main character being this cat like creature, somebody who's an Elder Scrolls fan like me,
Yeah.
immediately thought of a Kaji when I was reading the Grimmelkin Knight, but he's not quite as tall as a Kaji either. And it's just a really original and unique character. It's a great play on like Puss in Boots meets a knight meets Khajiits and all of that. So, how did you come to the decision to use a non-human main character for your debut book? Because I know that's quite a challenge.
Right. And I think if you've seen my conversation with Colton, I spoke about how I came about the idea for this character. And I mean, I started writing back when I was in college, 7 8 years ago, and I started coming up with ideas for this fantasy world that I wanted to write about. Um, and a few years ago, you know, funny enough, there's a concept art of a Khajiit from Skyrim, from the Elder Scrolls. There's this concept art. You could look it up online. It's like a Khajiit sitting by a campfire. He looks very sad, depressed. I'm like, oh,
Oh,
that's an interesting piece there. I wonder what his story is about. So I decided to go from there and tell a story about this character, and I wanted to use a non-human character, but also one that yeah, the Grimmelkin Knight, or the Grimmelkin, is not human, but you can relate to him because he
Yes.
goes through the struggles that anybody would go through. Um, he's a coward. He doubts himself every step of the way along his journey, even up to the end. He doubts himself, and I wanted to show that so that any reader, any person can relate to that because at one point or another in our lives, we doubt ourselves, we fear the unknown, um, and I wanted to show that on a non-human characters that it could be applied to anybody, no matter your age, race, whatever. So that's why I went about it with that character. And funny enough, I wrote a full length novel, it's like 96,000 words with this. This character was a secondary character.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and that story, didn't work out. It was quite adult. It was actually a lot more graphic and all that. And it just, the characters were kind of bland. The main characters actually were kind of bland. So I scrapped that, shelved that idea, and then I decided to focus on, Galahad, the Grimalkin Knight, and that's where, this story sort of spawned, from the concept art and then from my draft of a story essentially.
That's awesome. And Callahan really does embody sort of that everyman character where you can easily imagine yourself in his boots, just overcoming all the different obstacles, both of his age, being young, his reputation, being a new knight, having to accept a title that maybe he would not have thought of himself accepting for himself, the responsibility that comes with that, and knowing when to seek help and who to seek it from. It's just a great marriage of like this beautiful coming of age story that also focuses on finding your voice and dealing with controversial issues too, like racism. Because a lot of people are racist against the Grimalkin in the book, and he overcomes that. But it's addressed in a way that flows naturally in the story, and you've done just a great, great job with it. So if you're watching and you want to check it out, definitely grab it while it's 99 cents because that is a steal. Um, I
Yeah.
actually have the link to it in the bio, as well as a link to a whole bunch of other books during Kindle Countdown Week because this is part of a promotion that a whole bunch of us fantasy authors have gotten together to do. And we've already spoken with some other authors earlier this week. You can go back and watch the replays. We've got more coming in the next few days. We have C.H. Smith and Daniel Pagan Murphy and Shanna Dow, who are all going to come on too. But Luis, I know that you're getting your feet into the community, and from a writing standpoint, how hard has that been for you, or how easy has that been for you? Has it come naturally, or are you like sort of making yourself go one platform at a time? I know you got a Twitter today.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm going to drop that handle in here. But yeah, tell us about how you decided which platform to go to and how you're expanding.
Right. So I started with Instagram. I think. I mean, I've been familiar with Facebook for a few years. I mean, I have a personal Facebook account, but I stopped using that, and I started using Instagram a lot more, and so I was a lot more familiar with Instagram. So it was easier for me to start out that way, and essentially I started out posting my maps, which is something else that I do. The maps for actually for the
They're
novel.
so pretty.
No, thank you. Yeah. So I started posting that, and I saw that I started getting some followers, some traction. So I was like, okay, this is perfect way to start, build up, the profile, and lead into, eventually announcing my book, and and all my followers are going to buy the book. That was sort of the thought. So that's why I started with Instagram, and I'm still new to this, very much so. Just one novel in, uh, and so I'm still learning the ways of the craft, so to speak. And so now, like you said, I started a Twitter account, so you can follow me on
Yay.
Twitter, and I'll try to post there as much as I can. And like we were talking earlier, I'm also going to start a Facebook page, sort of expand because I know some people may not have Instagram or use it as much. So I'm trying to be where everybody can see me, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. wherever your platform of choice, you can have access to my content. See my maps, see the books that are going to be coming out in the near future.
Yes, yes. And at the very least, follow Luis on Amazon, because that way when he puts up a new pre-order or puts up a new book, you get a ping. Because
Yes.
I'm very excited and waiting for the next Grimmelkin book. Hey, Shanna. Shanna says, hi, Luis. Great to see this
Hey, Shanna.
interview.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah. And if you are watching on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube and you have questions for Luis, please drop them in the chat, because the whole reason we're doing this live is just to get to know you guys and answer any questions you have about Luis's works. I'm going to go ahead and drop the link to the Reedsy Discovery review that I left Luis. And you can upvote it if you like the review, and that'll get more publicity there for Luis and his book. But there's also a link there that'll take you to all his socials. You can click on his author bio, and it'll take you to all his socials and all of that too. So, as for Grimmelkin 2 and writing projects, at the beginning of this year, I know we talked about you have a lot of writing that you're knocking out in 2022. How's that going?
So it's coming along. It's crazy how time flies. I mean, we're almost halfway into the year, and I'm looking at it. I'm thinking to myself, I thought I'd be further along in the novel, but I'm not. And before I know it, it's gonna be the end of the year. But yeah, the sequel is coming. I'm still working on it. I am on chapter 6 right now.
Wow.
Kind of stuck on chapter 6 at the moment, but I'm there. It's probably going to be about the same length as the first book, so roughly 22 chapters or so. So, chapter 6, yeah, still still a ways away, um, but it's coming along. I I won't say it will be this year, but early next year it will be available for sure. But for this year, I do plan on releasing a book. We were talking about this earlier. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
be a shorter story, and actually, it's based on a book I wrote in the third grade.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it's written in Spanish, so I'm translating it and updating it.
Wow.
So it's going to be based on this. It's called The Lost Ring. As you can tell from the
Wow.
title, it's based on the Lord of the Rings. But I'm writing that, rewriting it, so it's based on that book. And like I spoke to you earlier, it's gonna be on the shorter end, so short story, novella
Mm-hmm.
length. So max, I'm planning 30,000, but then but then again, that's what I said with the Green Book at Night, and then it turned out to be a full length novel. So we'll see. But the plan is, a shorter story to give readers uh, the access or the ability to dip their toes. If they're not sure, oh, this new author, who is he? They can read something shorter, get a feel of my writing, and go from there. And if they like
Mm-hmm.
it, they can pick up the Green Book at Night and the sequel and so on.
I love that Grimmelkin Knight started off as like a Hobbit inspired book, and if you're watching and you haven't read it yet, you can tell that the feeling that someone who loves Lord of the Rings has put their heart and soul into this book. But it is not by any means like, don't let that inspiration thing make you think it's a fan fiction, because it is not. It is a completely original and strong story by itself. And I heard another author, D.M. Sontag, talk about The Lightning Bride and just how it started as a fan fiction, and basically she rewrote it and rewrote it and rewrote it until it was originally hers. And I think that's awesome that you started off, you've got your third grade book and now you're revising it into this awesome piece for people to read, and you're translating it to boot. So,
Yeah,
yeah, are you going to release a Spanish version since you already sort of have more of the Spanish version done?
yeah. So a couple of friends, Spanish-speaking friends, have asked me when I'm gonna translate the Grim Book at Night, and I said, well, I don't have time to start to essentially write it from scratch. So I've looked
Mm-hmm.
into like translating it, and then it's like, well, it's out of my budget, so I guess I'll do it myself. So at least for this one, I will release, English version and then the Spanish version, and then the Grimlock Night. We'll see.
That's awesome. Shanna says, "What are some tips for map making? I want to create a new one for my series."
Um, some tips. Let's see.
Do you do yours by hand or do you use a software? Or
So I started by hand, paper, pencil, and now I just draw using either Procreate, which is an app for the iPad, or Autodesk Sketchbook. Um, Photoshop. Yeah, who needs Photoshop? um, but a tip, I guess. One of the things that helped me was watching YouTube videos. There's a lot of YouTube videos that show you how to start up a map, and I think one of the best ways to start is just draw a raw shape. Just draw a blob, a random shape. It could be an oval or it can be like a potato shaped figure, and then from there you can start like carving out sort of the landscape, the coastlines, and all that. Once you get the coastlines down, you can put the mountains and put the forests and start, drawing the rivers. And before you know it, you have a map. But
that's
yeah, the best
amazing.
advice is just start out with basic shapes. Draw a
Hmm.
blob. It's not going to look nice or pleasing to the eye at first, but just draw a raw shape. You don't need to have uh, a a career in art or an art degree. You can just draw a random shape and then go from there. Just start sketching out coastlines, like I said, and you're gonna start molding it. And like I said, before you know it, you have a map in your hands.
Wow, that's awesome. And so you have, I don't know if I'm spoiling something here. You have a Fiverr, right? Where you do maps for people.
I do. No, you can
Okay.
no, yeah, I do. So I started a gig. If you're interested, it's on Fiverr. I do draw maps if you're interested for fantasy or even your D&D campaign. So yeah, you can check that out.
Yeah, let me see if I can get the link and I'll drop it in because you're working with, I know I've seen on Instagram, with C.H. Smith, who's coming on live tomorrow to talk about Nothing More Than Zero. And just watching the process on your Instagram has been really amazing. Um, Here's the Fiverr gig. But yeah, so you decided to do the map for the Grimalkin Night, which is a beautiful map. And if you guys haven't seen it, the picture is up on Instagram too, I believe. But it's in color and everything. It's just gorgeous. It's a traveling epic fantasy. So he adventures. Is there anything spoilery or not spoilery? Maybe a hint that you can tell us about the story in book two? Is it going to pick up where book one left off, or are we going to skip some time? Or
Yeah, it picks up essentially directly where the first Grimlock Night ended, and it's gonna be dealing with essentially the aftermath of a
the end of
particular
book one?
character. the
Yes.
one character that is sort of a twist
Mm-hmm.
that you don't expect to be one way, but ends up being that way. So
Yeah.
essentially, it's the aftermath of that, and without spoiling anything, and I'm trying to maneuver my the best way.
Right.
Um, Essentially, the king dealing with what happened and his children.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't want to say anything else.
So Caladan has to save the world again.
Yeah, so he has to deal with that in a way, and take someone. I'll just say this: he has to be. He's given a quest to take a particular character away from the kingdom because of what they have done.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Wow. So, speaking of characters, and this one doesn't require really any spoilers, was there any character that was more fun to write or more challenging to write in the Grimmelkin Knight?
Um, I think, um, let's see, more fun. I think Galahad in general was fun because in many aspects he has a lot of my personality in him. You
Oh,
know, just being like sort of shy, uh, and he thinks not only is he short of stature, but he thinks himself lower than other people. And
mm,
you know, like you said, a lot of the people in the kingdom they see him as like this, uh, insignificant, creature, not worthy of the
mm,
title of a knight. They don't take him serious because he's small. He's like basically a cat, and they call him a cat in the book. He's like, "Hey, I'm not a cat,"
yeah,
but they still do because they think him like he's worthless or whatnot. But so I had a lot of fun writing him and just exploring his progression and like we talked about earlier, him facing those obstacles, not only the physical obstacles but his inner obstacles as well.
mm,
Another fun character was and he doesn't get a lot of and he actually starts off the story and you think the story's about him but ends up not being is his mentor and essentially his father figure.
yeah.
And there's some emotional moments in there where he sort of sees him and whatnot. Also, his wooden companion Oakhead, who doesn't
Yes.
speak, doesn't say anything, but he was quite fun and a bit challenging because the character doesn't say a word, so I had to find ways to make him emotional and make him feel like a character, even though he just stands there and just using essentially his body language, the way he smacks Galahad or other characters around, and he shows emotion that way. But it was hard because he doesn't say a single word. So that was
It
a
was brilliant, though. It was like Turnip Head from Howl's Moving Castle.
I'm glad you brought that up. That was my inspiration for Oakhead.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, Oakhead is more expressive than Turnip Head by far, but it's
mhm.
that same emotional attachment that you get to a character. It was beautifully done. Um, so I'm really excited for both of your books, this one, the shorter one, and the longer one. I'm curious about, with a book as unique as yours, what made you decide to go indie or self publish Grimmelkin Knight as opposed to, I mean, I don't know if you tried to pitch it first or what, but I'd be just interested to find out.
Yeah, so when I started this and as I was writing the story, I kept going back and forth. Should I go traditional, self-published? I kept going back and forth throughout the process, even up to the end. But I figured, the book being the way it is, I just wanted to maintain some of that creative control. Um, and I don't know, I I felt that the traditional, and I wanted to publish the book as soon as I finished it. Essentially, as soon as it was edited, it's complete. I wanted to publish it, and and I don't know how true this is. I've never dealt into traditionally published the traditional published route. But
Mm-hmm.
I've read a lot, saw videos that sometimes even if you have an agent, which you need, it could take months, maybe even a year or whatnot to
Mm-hmm.
get your book published. So I was
Right.
like, nah, I don't want to wait that long. I want to publish it as soon as I can, and get the audience feedback, get some traction going. I don't want to sit here a year and then just be, well, is it out yet? When's it coming out? So
Mm-hmm.
I decided to go the indie route, and so far, it's been exciting. It's been a learning curve, and like I said, I'm still new to this, still learning. But that's one of the reasons why I went the self-publishing route.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've heard a lot of people say that, and it is a long process. It seems like most people, it takes 1 to 3 years to get signed by an agent, and another 2 to 4 years after you get signed by a press to have them produce it and put it out and get it ready to market. And it's a long wait when you've got a story that's just begging to be out there and begging to be
Right.
told.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, and if you read stories like famous author J.K. Rowling, she's the most, arguably the most famous modern author, most
Hmm.
successful. But if you read her story, she got rejected by however many publishers and whatnot. And I don't want to be in that route because
Yeah, yeah.
the way that I am, if I would have been rejected by like 10 publishers, I would have been like, all right, I give up.
Well, not all stories are meant for the same publication process. It's really story by story, and I love finding the hidden gems in the indie community, which is why
Yeah,
I'm so
absolutely.
honored to just talk to you. Somebody asked, "Is there romance in the Grimmelkin Night?"
There is slightly. I mean, I wouldn't say. I mean, it depends on your, the way you see romance, but not in the traditional sense that the main character has a romantic relationship with a
Mm-hmm.
secondary character, or he falls in love with the secondary character or whatnot. But there is a bit of romance between two characters.
Mm-hmm.
They're secondary characters, and their story is kind of tragic, but slightly romance there.
Yeah, I'd say it's sort of Lord of the Rings style for romance.
Yeah,
That it is very clean, and the romance is very realistic, and it fits in naturally on the page from when I read it. But it's not. This is not a romance. This is a definitely an epic like adventure fantasy. Um, and yeah, um, how dark is it? Well, I think that depends on your level of dark.
right.
This is. I'm gonna just say there wasn't any extreme graphic anything in it. But if you consider Lord of the Rings dark, you might consider this dark.
Yeah, I would say that and I've gotten feedback from a couple of people that read it, that there are some dark scenes. There's one chapter where I introduce a creature, and I wanted it to feel scary because part of it not only uh, it scares the main character Galahad. So that's a dark scene, and what happens to him facing that creature is kind of frightening. And then towards the end, one of the things a character commits is kind of dark and could be seen like out of place. But I wanted it there to emphasize sort of the evil and the
Mm,
darkness of this character's heart. Um,
mm.
so, primarily those two scenes, without spoiling anything. Uh, but overall, the book in general, not too dark.
Mm-hmm. Luis, do you have a website? So Luis does have a
I
website.
do.
Here it is. Do you have a newsletter?
Um, yeah,
I see a subscribe on there.
you can subscribe on there. And, I'm gonna update that during this week now that we're having the sale as well. But yeah, you can subscribe through my website for the newsletter.
Awesome. Well, if there are any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I know there's a little tiny bit of a delay between when you put your question and we see it. It's usually like a few seconds. But Luis, thank you so much for hopping on a weeknight to
Absolutely.
chat with all of us live. It has been a blast, and I've loved hearing about how you were inspired to write the Gromilkin Night. I'm so excited to see what happens with Callahad in the next book. Are you going to put it up for pre-order before it comes out, or are you just going to launch it live? Or
Yeah, I mean, for the first book, since I didn't have a big following, I just released it. But for the second
mm-hmm.
one, I am gonna put a pre-order up. I'm gonna announce it. Oh, it's coming out, in a few months or whatever, so people can know, can pre-order it. Yeah, for sure.
That's exciting! Ah, I can't wait. Yes, definitely going on my list of books to read in early 2023. for sure.
Nice,
So,
thank you.
my pleasure. So, yeah, if you want to read The Grimmelkin Knight, which is book one, it is already out. It is up right now. You can get it for 99 cents during Kindle Countdown Week. And if you would like to check out the other authors that are also listing their books for 99 cents, their link is also in the description box. Tomorrow we have C.H. Smith, who wrote The Princess Knight, coming on. And he is one of my other 5-star review books from last year was The Princess Knight. And Nothing More Than Zero is one of his new books, and it's got dragons and stuff. So we're going to talk about more amazing epic fantasy tomorrow
Yeah,
night.
very
So
exciting.
subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you then. Thank you so much, Louise. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.